Justice League fans have a new fantasy scenario, but it has significant issues. The devoted online fanbase of Zack Snyder is quite knowledgeable about effective social media marketing strategies. Zack Snyder's supporters fought Warner Brothers for 3 years to make the final edit of his 2017 film, Justice League, available to the public by using the hashtag #ReleaseTheSnyderCut on Twitter. Do you think he can keep working with DC with several controversial developments? Starting us off, what is the reaction of Zack Snyder's fans? In the hopes that the director's original intention for 2 more stories in this epic could be reinstated, the community has worked to maintain Snyder's vision. They would wrap up a character even if they weren't part of the DC film's continuity. However, there are several drawbacks to their most recent plan. After attempting to launch #RestoreTheSnyderverse, its creators think it could be conceivable for Warner Brothers to sell the Snyderverse to Netflix, with whom Snyder now has a relationship that has produced 2 Army of the Dead films and will produce the epic sci-fi drama Rebel Moon. The social media warriors are organizing a trending event for February 14th under the new hashtag #SellTheSnyderverse to Netflix. The date is significant since one of the arguments Snyder used to convince people to support his Justice League Snyder Cut was that it was 214 minutes long. So, why are Zack Snyder's fans asking for more? Speaking of the demand, Zack Snyder's DC fans keep asking for more stories set in that particular region of the DC universe, known as the Snyderverse, even though it is highly improbable. All of the characters in the DC universe are presently owned by Warner Brothers. The big studio has just given its reins to James Gunn and Peter Safran, who will announce a piece of their 8 to 10 year plan for DC films this year after years of turmoil and a lack of leadership. Would they license their most prized possessions like Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman, and others to Netflix's rivals? The answer is no. With Todd Phillips creating Joker stories in what seems to be a separate universe, and Matt Reeves is producing Batman pictures, there is already a fair amount of brand uncertainty within WB. We are unsure of how those films will fit into Gunn and Safran's larger strategy. But you can bet that those 2 producers are working together to find a quick fix for the ripple that they inherited. There is no way they would want Netflix, a rival, to carry on a series of DC storylines featuring Ben Affleck, Henry Cavill, and Gal Gadot that would only compete with fresh iterations of the iconic characters WB is expected to want to reintroduce in the upcoming years. I can think of one instance that might serve as a model for the arrangement Snyder's supporters hope to achieve with #SellTheSnyderverse to Netflix, and that is the agreement between Sony, Disney, and Marvel to share one of their assets, Spider-Man, for MCU films. The studios argued over profit margins, threatened to break the agreement, and ultimately forced Tom Holland to intervene and save his place at the MCU table, according to everyone involved in the arrangement. Additionally, Sony wasn't actively attempting to release a second Spider-Man film simultaneously, as Holland was portraying the character from Marvel and Disney. Since WB will be attempting to use its DC heroes, it would be undesirable for them to appear in Zack Snyder's Netflix productions. Up next, what is Zack Snyder's movie plan for fans? I do comprehend the frustration felt by the Snyder fans, who only want more stories in this setting. Furthermore, they have recently been subjected to harsh treatment after being informed that Henry Cavill, their preferred Superman, would not be reprising the role. Some fans also harbored the dream that The Flash might somehow revive a different version of events where Ben Affleck could still play Batman without interfering with Gunn and Safran's new scheme. I think that makes more sense because at the very least it keeps these valuable characters domestically rather than selling IP to Netflix. I'm willing to bet though that The Flash does not create this side pocket of a universe and that WB and DC films move forward in a different direction, given that Cavill has admitted he won't be returning in the tights and that Snyder appears content at Netflix for the time being. However, as Snyder supporters have demonstrated, everything in Hollywood is relatively easy. Unusual deals happen. Certainties that have been assumed in the past fail. The pendulum of the industry stays consistent. It needs to be more consistent. I'm hesitant to believe that we will hear that announcement anytime soon, because historically significant deals typically make sense for all parties involved, and selling or licensing DC's major characters to Netflix doesn't make any sense for Warner Brothers. And now, Zack Snyder creates highly stylized and action-heavy films that may not align with the overall tone of the DC universe. The action-packed fever dreams that Zack Snyder creates clashes with the DC universe. Zack Snyder is one of those filmmakers with a notion that seems innocent enough, but is doomed from the start. After being motivated by his mother's experience in painting and photography, he attended art schools. After graduating from high school, he studied painting at the Heatherley School of Fine Art in London, England, while beginning his filmmaking career in 1989 at the Pasadena, California-based Art Center College of Design. Since then, his love of horror and comic books has become a passion project. Snyder's unpaid dedication to the remake of the Justice League was an admirable labor of passion. Although the director has embraced and updated DC Comics characters for the DC Expanded Universe, the DCEU, there are better choices to return to or continue with. Though unexpected developments can occur in Hollywood, as demonstrated by Snyder's fanbase, it's unlikely likely Warner Brothers will make a deal that does not benefit them in any way, such as selling or licensing major DC characters to Netflix. These historic deals usually make sense for all parties involved, but in this case, it does not. Therefore, it is not probable for this announcement to be made shortly. In other news, why should Zack Snyder not return to the DC Universe? As an executive for DC Studios' DC Universe, James Gunn is paving the way. Batman and the Joker, two iconic characters, are led by Matt Reeves and Todd Phillips, respectively. Snyder, in contrast, favors absurdist seriousness over these utterly serious films. His use of slow motion glorifies the bloodshed and carnage in his movies. A small audience receives this frenetic wrestling battle well from a Snyder comic book adaptation, but it's time for a change of pace, not another comeback. One of the main issues with Zack Snyder's approach to the DCEU is his handling of the characters. Man of Steel, the first film in the DCEU, was given to Snyder by director Christopher Nolan. The script was intended for Nolan to direct and would have created a different universe for Superman. However, Snyder's approach did not fully develop the character of Superman. The task of humanizing a superhero is a challenging one, and Snyder's attempts to do so fell short. The portrayal of Superman was wooden and took itself too seriously, which made it unintentionally funny. Snyder's Superman came across as a Christ figure or savior, a cliche, and did not provide much else for fans to enjoy. Up next, other criticisms of Zack Snyder. Zack Snyder's action scenes are often criticized for being overly choreographed, slow-motion heavy, and lacking in excitement. Instead of staying faithful to the characters, the slow-motion technique is used gratuitously and makes the action sequences longer than they need to be. This becomes tedious and distracting after a while. Additionally, when the action isn't happening on screen, the dialogue is often filled with cringe-worthy moments. For example, in Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice, Lex Luthor, Jesse Eisenberg, shakes hands with Clark Kent, saying his grip is so strong that no one should pick a fight with him. This type of dialogue is not clever or self-aware. Snyder's approach seems influenced by the graphic novels 300 and Watchmen, but this style does not translate well in the DCU, resulting in an inconsistent and unsatisfying experience. Action scenes don't always have to be fast-paced or filled with slow motion to be engaging. Snyder's approach seems to think that he can have the best of both worlds, but it's not the case. The Snyderverse is known for its use of dark, muted colors, making the normal passage of time feel slower and the eyes wearier. In broad daylight, Batman's black is brighter than Superman and Wonder Woman's costumes. Snyder's projects often fall flat, go over the top, or both. His original concept films, such as Sucker Punch and Army of the Dead, are derivative distractions that rely on familiarity. Sucker Punch is an anthologized horror-themed version of Sailor Moon, or Alice in Wonderland with machine guns. And Army of the Dead is a heist in Las Vegas during a zombie apocalypse that follows the plot of Aliens closely. Snyder is one of the most polarizing directors and uses blunt and stunted cinematic language, which is not beneficial for the DCU. It doesn't need Snyder to put any more of his words in its mouth. Finally, the different DCU versions by Zack Snyder and James Gunn. James Gunn and Zack Snyder are two different directors with similar backgrounds who have different visions for the DC Universe. The past year has been a roller coaster for fans of the DC Universe, with multiple delays to films, conflicting reports at the box office, and the cancellation of a film. Fans were excited and relieved when James Gunn and Peter Safran were appointed as the head of the newly formed DC Studios to make an interconnected plan for the franchise. However, the excitement was short-lived as Gunn announced a new take on Superman that will not star Henry Cavill and the cancellation of Patty Jenkinson's Wonder Woman 3. This has led to a division in the fan base, with those loyal to Snyder's take on the DC Universe calling for Gunn to be fired, while others are open to a new take on the material. Unfortunately, guys, that is all the time we have for today. Make sure to like and subscribe to the channel, and until next time, cheers!